All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. And today I got a really special guest. He's a colleague of mine from PJ Media. He's a stand-up comedian, and he's an all-around cool dude, Kevin Downey Jr. Recently... Hello there. And recently, this is so funny. He looks like he's a hippie, or not a hippie, but, like a creative, which you are. And you recently wrote a story about Project 2025. And we are going to air this recording. We are going to air this interview with you right before we get into this very long interview that we've already recorded with the Heritage Foundation. And subsequent to our conversation with Heritage, we found out that the person in charge of Project 2025, which is a blue book, a sort of a map, a roadmap for any Republican presidential winner to do certain things during the transition process and offer up people to help. That's all that was. But the leader of the Project 2025 with Heritage has now, well, he's gone on to do something else, but Project 2025 still lives. And I thought I'd throw that out to you first, Kevin. When you heard that, what were you thinking?
All right. So when it first came out, I didn't know what the point was. I didn't know if this was written by Never Trumpers. I didn't know. And then I started reading it. I didn't read all 992 pages, I think. What I did was, I still have a couple of communist friends on Facebook. They haven't all abandoned me, and I haven't abandoned all of them. And they were posting these bogus memes. Project 2025 is going to take away your kids, or they're going to make you give birth to, and just the dumbest things on the planet. So I would debunk them. I'd sit there at night when I couldn't sleep, and I would debunk these things, say, no, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. And it just occurred to me that Project 2025 is at best a wish list, if you would say, for conservative, for the more conservatives. They want to outlaw pornography. Okay, you know what? I mean, everyone has their goals and whatnot. But I thought maybe this was just made to scare people, which the left is really good at doing, or taking something that's not even scary and going, oh my God, look at this boogeyman called the Project 2025. And people are like, look what they're going to do to us. Look what they're going to do. And it's not that bad. I mean, there's not a lot in there I disagree with, but it's also not the plan. It's not the plan. It's what the people, I think it was well over 100 people who contributed it. Well, I think over 400 if you count all of them. And I think it's just like, we would like to see these things happen. And I've tried to tell people that, but the Marxists, they're weak, afraid, they're weak, scared people. And that's why they're Marxists, because weak, scared people are easy to control. So after a while, I just said, well, this is really nothing but a wish list. And no one wanted to hear that. But I didn't disagree with a lot of it. I don't disagree with.
Yeah, me too. There wasn't a lot I disagreed with. Again, I've only probably read half of it. But I took out the parts. I went to the DOJ part. I went to the IC community part. I sort of scanned the Health and Human Services Department. I looked at the Department of Education department, where they want to devolve that back down to the states. I'm old enough, Kevin, because I am the adult in the room, not the child in the room. I'm old enough to remember a time when there wasn't a federal Department of Education. Can you believe that? I mean, so it's just a relatively recent event.
Yeah, I'm 58, and my I remember when there wasn't one. I also remember I grew up in Detroit, and my parents sent us to Catholic school because the schools were so bad, and nothing has gotten in Detroit anyway. Things have gotten far worse.
Yes.
under the app.
So, I mean, Project 2025 calls for a total voucher program. I'm in total agreement with that, because this
100%.
system has to be, this has to be shaken up. There has to be, I'm going to say it. Nobody else except us will probably say it out loud. And that is, the teachers unions are running schools as their own personal fiefdoms for the benefit of adults and not children. Therefore, they should not have an oversized say in how schools are run. Other people might see that as busting the union. I think there could be a parody or something, not even a parody. They don't deserve parody. But I mean, there has to be some way to lessen the impact of teachers, because they don't have your children's best at heart. They don't. That's not their job. I mean, isn't the former head of the AFT, American Federation of Teachers, his line was, kids don't pay dues, man. We don't represent them.
Absolutely. And I think the teachers union has gotten way too strong. I think it's been hijacked by, actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the 45 goals of communism to take over the U.S. without firing a shot, is entered into Congress in 1963. One of them is take over the schools, soften the curriculum, put Marxism in it. And that's why we see these green-haired, non-binary testicle-hating teachers who are telling their kids, I pledge allegiance to the gay flag and all the gay and all the gay stuff, and the trans and the gay and the gay and the trans. That is what I see the huge problem. I'm all for dismantling. You're not going to take down the teachers union, I don't think, but the Board of Education absolutely should go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, it's interesting. They don't want you to be forced to comply with telling or reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, but they will command that you tolerate and comply with saying the, whatever, anything to the gay flag, or you can't say that this gay pride, or, whatever. It's not fair. I mean, it's obviously something that is not addressed equally, not to be confused with equity, which doesn't mean equity. It means supremacy. So, Kevin, here are some of the things you said in your story on PJ Media, which I would gladly bring up, except I apparently can't do that. And as what is Project 2025? For example, Project 2025 is not as nearly as dangerous as BLM's intent to defund the police, for example. And you give several examples. I'm going to give you the floor because you say it much better than I could ever.
Oh, thank you. So wait, we can't talk about that? Is that a legal thing?
No, what are you talking about? No. Oh, no. No, I just don't have the skill. You're funnier and you're more clever, and you can do that because you're the man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, defund the police and all the George Floyd stuff they were pushing on the kids is far more dangerous than anything in Project 2025. Project 2025 was not a mandate. It was nothing but hey, wouldn't it be great if the next Republican president did this sort of thing? The defund the police thing, which worked. Keep in mind, Project 2025, again, a wish list, defund the police, a wish, and it succeeded. And here's the sick part. Who suffered the most from defunding the cops in all our big blue toilet cities? Well, that would be the Black communities who suffered the most. And I know on the West Coast there, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, you've got all these, I call them the big blue toilet cities. Over here, we've got New York and Baltimore, D.C., and of course, Chicago. I mean, we could do this all day. But defund the police actually took root and actually had tragic consequences, mostly for the Black community. And we can look at other things. The illegal immigrants, let's let them in. All right. See, we can see how these lefty commie pinko policies have gotten people killed. Whereas Project 2025, if it did actually go into effect, pornography, but people want it or they don't. I realize that it's also one of the 45 goals of Marxism, inject pornography and indecency. That's why you got your, the really far left, angry gay mob. I call them the Gestapo. They're the ones pushing a lot of this stuff. But yeah, Project 2025 was just a wish list. But the left they've gotten what they wanted. You want to defund the police? Okay, look at that. And
yes, you've gotten higher murder rates of Black people throughout the country, Black and brown people. And not only that, but now they have the temerity to say that the crime rates have gone down, but that's only because a lot of the cities don't report their crime rates to the FBI anymore. Right?
Exactly.
Insane.
And you want to know what else is sick? So I'm a stickler for crime rates, and I do a lot of mass shooting stuff. What I've noticed is since I think 2019 was the last year that the FBI released actual race-related crime stats. Because in 2020, they didn't come out because Joe Biden said, well, we're not going to take those out anymore. We're just going to put those away. So they took a lot of crimes and said, well, these are no longer crimes. And they had a bunch of the big blue toilet cities say, in LA and New York no longer contribute because people will see just how bad this defund the police. And of course, don't forget cash bail has been damaging.
And California letting people out of prison early.
Letting people out in 2019. Cuomo was his name. Cuomo and Comrade Bill de Blasio said, we're just going to let these people out, for equity. And then the scamdemic came along. They let more people out. And what happened was the crime rate started to explode. And they say, well, since the pandemic, crime's went up. No. It was since they let people out, since they brought in cashless bail, and since they said, you know what, we're going to defund the cops. That is what is behind this. And these are deadly little plans. And they knew what was going to happen. This was never about keeping Black people out of jail. This was about keeping criminals on the streets because communism needs chaos to take root. When people are prosperous and safe, they're not going to jump on communism. But when you bring the nation down and people are fighting the streets and people are afraid to go outside, and that's when they're going to clamor for help. And that's when the socialists, which is just don't
even do bypass socialism entirely. Just go to communism. That's the end result, right?
That's what it is. Yeah,
you're a bunch of 100%. Commies. So recently we had J. Michael Waller on the program, and he's written a book called Big Intel. And he talks about the roots of communism in the country and how it infiltrated all of our institutions, including the FBI and the CIA. And it's all from the Frankfurt School. And we imported these emigres. And what happened was they just insinuated themselves because they had language skills and all this other stuff into different institutions that needed the help. And so the OSS was infiltrated by a bunch of commies, and it stayed that way until they blew it up, and then they started the secret or the CIA. And anyway, so I mean, A, it's happened. B, they flushed some of it out. C, they were able to reconstitute an intelligence agency. And that just gives me hope for the future because the CIA sucks. We're not sure what they've ever predicted correctly in the last 25 years.
Yeah, the CIA has been hijacked without a doubt. And I say that as someone who is completely non-suicidal, throwing that out there, Victoria, just in case. Just in case our friends of the CIA are listening. Yep. And what's fascinating is Eisenhower in his last speech said, hey, watch out for that military-industrial complex. Gotta go. See you. And he saw it come up.
Yeah.
And I wrote probably about a year and a half ago a timeline of every president who played ball with the CIA and who did it. And the ones who did it.
Oh, I got to see that.
Yeah. The ones who did it start with JFK. He got shot. Nixon was taken out by CIA members who broke into Watergate. And when Nixon tried to cover it up, they got him on that. Keep in mind, if you check the top 10 presidential landslides, Nixon has 2 of them. He was wildly popular.
He was wildly popular. He won re-election in a landslide. 49 out of 50 states.
Yep. And so people remember him now as a horrible president because they don't know what was going on. And you look at, so when they took Nixon out, they had to get, who was this VP? Was it Spiro Agnew originally?
Yes.
Yeah. They had to take him out.
And Spiro Agnew was taking bribes.
Yeah.
What's that?
So they got him out. and they put in Gerald Ford, who, God, what do you know? He worked on the Warren Commission. And Nixon said to the head of the CIA, he said, I know who killed John, meaning JFK.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he had to go. And Nixon wasn't keen on the war in Vietnam anymore. He's like, we got to stop. And that's bad for the military-industrial complex. They need to hoover in their bad stacks. So he had to go. Now, Roger Stone, and take this for what you will, after Reagan stopped the Cold War, they said, well, we need the Cold War. We're making so much money. And he says, Roger Stone, not me, says George Bush #1 had him shot because he was a former CIA leader when he was VP.
Roger Stone was shot? I didn't even realize that.
No, I'm sorry. He claims George Bush had Reagan shot. And there is a link between the guy who shot
John
Reagan,
Hinckley Jr. Mm-hmm.
His brother was tight friends with one of the Bush boys. So I see where he's drawing. I don't know if I agree with him, but it's just a little too close for comfort. And of course, Trump, not playing along with the military-industrial complex, he had to go. In that 2020 election, where the first time in my life they stopped counting votes in 5 swing states, I believe, at roughly the same time.
3, I think.
But nothing to see there, though, Victoria. Nothing to see. I'm a wacky conspiracy nut job for thinking that was stolen.
Yeah. Now there was lots of hideous things that happened during the 2020 election in the name of COVID and fighting back and not having people be in a place to cast a ballot and that sort of thing. It was atrocious, and they'll try anything again. This will come back. If they won't try it in 2024, they'll do something else. They're already setting the table for something else. But in 20 years or so, it'll come back. And people will not have an institutional memory of why that happened and what they should do about it, which is to say, do not comply. And so we'll see. We will see. They'll have us voting online any couple of the cycles, I think, election cycles. And that'll just be.
I firmly agree.
I firmly agree. Game over. Game over.
Yep.
Can I ask you now? I know that I told you that I wanted you to talk about the Project 2025, and we will continue to talk about it because I've got a couple of sound bites that I wanted you to at least see. And but after we play these, if you have time, I would like to ask you about the Secret Service and the hearing yesterday. If you happen to have taken a listen to it or watched a little bit of it or read something about it. But first, let's go to MSNBC and their takeaway on Project 2025.
This is not a normal election, and this is not your father's Republican Party. It's now Donald Trump's party. And if he's elected, the consequences will be catastrophic. Trump acolytes have an entire plan called Project 2025 that outlines priorities for the first 180 days of a new Trump administration. And it's not hyperbole to say that Project 2025 would dismantle democracy as we know it.
Oh, it's not hyperbole to say that, Kevin, even though it is. I just thought, play you a little reaction. Here's Ali Velshi. He's one of our faves.
Inside Project 2025 is a detailed plan for dismantling the Voice of America's independence more successfully. Page 243 of Project 2025 reads, quote, as an executive branch agency, the U.S. AGM ostensibly should report to the president and coordinate activities with the National Security Council. The document also suggests placing it under the State Department. Now, that would transform the Voice of America from a reliable journalistic publication for global audiences to a personal propaganda machine for the president. It continues, ensuring that taxpayer-funded TV, radio, and messaging tells America's story is imperative. Currently, VOA's foreign language TV programming is unreliable in telling America's story, given its amorphous interpretation of its independence firewall, end quote.
The man who comes from a place that doesn't have a First Amendment is now recommending, and for whom all Canadians have state-run media, and those that are not state-run media are being run out. He presumes to tell Americans that, hey, propaganda arms should be equal, fair, etc. News outlets. Which, I mean, let's be honest. Great, that'd be wonderful. Except they're not. Then let them stand on their own. Let them be their own thing. But they're government programs to propagandize the world. So anyway, I wanted you to sort of riff on that if you had a second about it.
Sure. Are you familiar with Operation Mockingbird?
Yes.
Okay, so for those who are, the CIA was busted in, I think, 1976 for manipulating media outlets. They had the Washington Post, the New York Times, the usual culprits. And they were told you can't do it anymore. Well, they're still doing it. I wrote about it, and I linked to where in, I forget the commission that looked into it, but they said, yeah, it's still working. Now, the CIA, Operation Mockingbird, they control news outlets. According to RFK Jr., they've got 400 around the world now. They own them. And I'm going to say, I don't know if you're familiar with Canadian Broadcasting Company or Corporation, whatever CBC stands for. They are nothing but a Marxist media outlet.
Oh, yeah.
And they're controlled. You've probably seen them go after Rebel News. I love those
absolutely.
Cats.
They are relentless against them.
Yep, because they're telling things as they are. And of course, they're getting shut down. And you're right, there is no free speech in Canada. People don't realize that. And now, so we've got, and they've got a bunch of other little outlets. Rolling Stone is controlled. Vox, I don't know anyone that takes Vox seriously. I think The View was created to get the wine box mommies in the Midwest onto Marxism. And for those who don't think that the Marxist push is on, Project Veritas, without James O'Keefe, they've got a guy from the State Department on one of their undercover cameras saying, well, the plan is to bring in Central Americans and Venezuelans because they're used to Marxism and they won't oppose it. And that's where the replacement theory comes. It's not about replacing white people. It's about replacing all natural-born Americans who, as you know, we have freedoms here. And there are people out there that don't like that. We'll call them commie pinkos. And the CIA realize they have to take over the news outlets, which they've done. Remember, though, there used to be 3. Now, there are dozens, and PJ Media is one of them. They don't control us. They don't control Rebel News, and we could go on and on at who they don't control. And that's where the CIA screwed up. They never thought there was going to be a bunch of PJ Medias, red states, etc., to get the truth out there. And that's why when you or I write an article about climate change, I used to have to misspell climate change, KLYMATT, and misspelled change just to get it through, because Google would demonetize the article and PJ would lose some cabbage on that. So the big techs are in on it too. And of course, I'm sure you know, the CIA paid, the FBI paid Twitter before Elon Musk had it, $3.5 million to censor unvaccinated people who said, hey, I think these shots are garbage. Hey, these masks don't work. Look what I found. So, yes, the push is on to shut us down. You know that. But, yeah, the CIA is a real problem in this country.
Yeah, I wonder if it's ever going to be a force for good. And why is it if their job is intelligence, they haven't gotten much right? This is very interesting. And so, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say they haven't gotten much right, but they've gotten what they want out there. That's the sick part.
Mm-hmm, mm-them. Yeah, and good point.
The brainwashing is so good. I have this list of media lies, and I'm sure you know all of them. Ivermectin is horse goo, and the masks work great, and this shot will keep you from getting COVID and keep you from giving it to your grandma. You meemaw killer. All of that. I list all these lies, and I asked the Facebook fascists to go, you believed all these? Why do you still believe Lester Holt? He's part of Operation Mockingbird. You offer someone enough money or you threaten them and they're going to go, yeah, okay, cool, I'll do that.
Yeah. The Russian collusion, I have the list that you put in your story. Trump called neo-Nazis fine people, Juicy Smollett, Bubba Wallace, garage pole, Trump P-tape. I mean, it goes on and on and on. All these fake news. It's fake news, and they tried. And the latest one was especially egregious. And that was happening before our eyes in front of the American people and the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. And the senators were told by Christopher Wray, the FBI leader, which I hope is the soon-to-be relieved of duty FBI chief, that, twice alluded to the fact, used language to the fact that Donald Trump may have just been hit by shrapnel. We don't really know.
Oh, my God. You know what? I saw one of my... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that was in the House, which, of course, caused a sensation on the left. And they ran with it. Well, see, Trump wasn't even shot. He's not a hero.
Yeah.
And, and that had to be clarified.
He came out of that looking like a boss. I'll be honest. When I got the call, Trump's been shot, I started to tear up. And my friend said, it just happened. He walked off stage. And it wasn't... I don't know if you're into guns, but I know enough about guns that even if you shoot someone with a .22, which is really small, you can die. You can get shot. You can die an hour later. Internal bleeding, like you just never know. So until we got the Truth Social message from Trump, I'm fine. Everyone, relax. I was just on edge. I know people. Some guy I used to work with at a comedy club, he just posted a picture of Trump. You can see the hole in Trump's ear. It says, "Oh, I thought Trump got his ear shot up. Look, it's all fake." And he's got a dozen or so of his brainwashed friends going, "Yeah, this is BS. He used to squib." Those blood squibs in Hollywood. "Oh, I got shot. It's fake blood."
Oh.
He was using a squib. So these people believe this. And I always post that list to you. Just go, you believed all these. Why do you still listen? You're a fascist. You're a fascist.
Yeah. Do you feel confident that the FBI will get to the bottom of the Trump assassination attempt?
So the law enforcement group that's trying to put him in prison is investigating the assassination. That I'm pretty sure if they didn't know about it, they don't want to solve. But I'll be honest. And you know what? I'm not a conspiracy guy. I used to, when someone said military-industrial complex, I used to go, yeah, whatever. Until I saw Eisenhower say, "Watch out for that military-industrial complex. That's a bad thing." So, and I'm not one of those wackos. I'm not a QAnon. I don't like QAnon. But I will say this: QAnon's not a danger. It's the Blueanons who are a danger, who believe all those lies on that list and everything else, and they react to that. They respond to that. And I don't know if you know this. I used to be a New York City Democrat, and now I'm not even close. I'm not even close.
Do you have time to tell me your origin story? What was that moment where you were red-pilled?
Oh yeah, a friend of mine, a libertarian, said to me, he goes, "You're too smart to believe what you believe." And he's a 3-hour conversation. He told me a lot of things. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I started reading more than headlines. And for a solid year, I would read, and this is back during George Bush's first term, I would read Fox, CNN, and BBC every day. And of course, if you read those three, same story, you'll come back with 3 different opinions. But I saw the lies. I saw how the media manipulates people. And it's true. I will be very honest and tell you why I was a Democrat. My parents, I grew up in Detroit. They're auto workers. I'm sort of, I can't say I'm white trash. Technically, my parents did not rent. So they own their double wide. Hence, I'm Caucasian debris. And that's how I became a Democrat. Then I moved to New York City. And it's a self-esteem thing. You're with us and you're cool and you're open-minded, or you're one of them. And I'm going, oh, I'm not one of them. I'm still a Democrat. And then I realized right now, I don't really hang out with any liberals. But everyone is they're either a conservative or what I call a Trump conservative, like myself. And I don't know any racists. I don't know anyone who goes, "Hey, we're doing a comedy show. No black or brown people." I don't know any of those. All the racism and bigotry I see comes from the left. I firmly believe the left spent the last 30 years saying, if you're not with us, you're a bigot. And you can't, and remember part of their plan is you can't criticize people who are a different race, different religion or from a different culture. You can't do that. And what happened in England? Our friend Robert Spencer has written about this 1,000 times. In England, they became so woke that Pakistani Muslims were raping tens of thousands of women in England and young girls. And the cops wouldn't do anything because they thought, well, it'd be racist if we point out that they're all Muslims, can't do that. And they allowed this to continue. And it's coming here. It's coming here. You're not allowed to say, hey, what's with all these Venezuelans attacking cops? What's with all these murders and rapes of women and children by illegal immigrants? But I'm not afraid to say that. And of course, they call me a racist every day. But and I write now and then about the crime coming from south of the border, and I have reasons that I believe Gropey Joe Biden, President Fingerdiddle, left the border open, and I think it's the Chinese told them to. They want to sell fentanyl, and they're working with the Mexican drug cartels, which are in all 50 states now, and people coming over the border, a lot of them are bringing fentanyl with them. And people, you're a racist. Yeah. Downey, you're a racist. No. I watch. I'm watching it happen. But that brainwashing, you can't say that. They're minorities. You can't say that, you big white bigot, you animal. But and it's not about race. There are people who commit crimes. And you know who's not coming over to commit crimes? Mexican people, let's say, with jobs and steady lives. They're not coming over. It's the Venezuelan gangsters and it's the Chinese. And I promise you, I happen to know twice a week, Catherine Salgado from PJ and I both read about this. They're trying to get onto military installations at a rate of like twice a week. So, and keep in mind, Joe Biden stopped the Trump-era China initiative chasing Chinese spies. And you know why Biden stopped it? He said, well, it's racist. Well, okay, most of the spies from China are probably going to be Chinese. So you can't just say, well, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, just Project 2025 called for the resumption of the China initiative. I'm fine with that. Bill Barr, that was one good thing Bill Barr did. He knew whereof he spoke on that issue. Well, gee, Kevin, I just am so glad that you could come on the program today. I really appreciate you making some room in your day for me, because I know you are sought after. You do a couple of, podcasts on PJ Media. You and Cruiser do one.
Yeah.
And
can I get my radio show?
Please do. He does a radio show. He's busy, man.
I would like to have you call in because every time someone from PJ calls in, the listeners go crazy. I've had Spencer on.
Oh, good.
I've had Salgado on, Cruiser. I've had Vodka on, and people love it because we're all personable and we all know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to have you on sometime. It's linewsradio.com, L for Long Island, linewsradio.com, 10 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. That would be Eastern Standard Time. But we slap the commies every weekday, 10 to 11.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I have a question for you. Where are you next for your stand-up? He's a stand-up comedian, everybody.
So the one I really want to push, if anyone's on Long Island, I'll be at McGuire's Comedy Club Labor Day weekend, August 30th and 31st. And I'm going to be at Parks Casino in September, on September 12th. That's right outside Philly.
Well, so you're an inside the, East Coast sort of guy. Or do you do well over on the West Coast, or are they just too uptight here?
So, funny you should ask. I don't do the West Coast anymore. And I just don't do it because, number one, it's dangerous. Number two, some friends of mine just got canceled from a club in Seattle about 4 months ago for no reason other than they're not leftists. So it's just, I don't go there. I used to love working Portland. It used to be one of my favorite stops. Seattle's fun, but I won't go to any of these places. So you won't see me out there anytime soon. I'll be honest, I don't even work New York City anymore because it's gotten that bad. You know what? I hate the way they say these Republicans are so violent. We're not violent. It's, you know what? I didn't see any MAGA hats burning down Minneapolis, Chicago, or Seattle, Portland. Those are not MAGA hats. And did you see the video of the guy? You see the video of the guy? He's wearing a Trump T-shirt, and he goes into a New York City Biden rally, and they throw water on him. They threaten to beat him up. He goes across to the Trump side, takes off his Biden shirt. He's wearing now he's wearing a Biden shirt on the Trump side, and no one's giving him any hassle. They're just like, "Oh, okay, yeah, come on, yeah, you can." We've been sold so many lies, and I'm actually ashamed that I used to be a part of that and used to believe all that crap. But it is what it is. That's what they do. It's separate, divide and conquer. But I'm telling anyone listening, we are the good guys. And I think this has always been the good side.
I think that when you are on the side of more freedom and not less freedom, you're the good guy. That's what I think.
Yes. And you know what? These Hitler Youth on the universities about a month ago, terrorizing Jewish kids. Once again, no MAGA hats to be found there. That was all them.
Yep.
All them.
Yep. And the people, I will just reiterate that for viewers of this podcast, you already know this, but as in our last interview with J. Michael Waller, also reiterated that the people who were wearing the backwards MAGA hats at J6, if you see that, probably not MAGA people. Just saying. Just go back and look at all the videos again. Yeah. And,
so you saw all those blue and non conspiracy theories. There's two left. That will come out hopefully in our lifetimes. J6 was a setup. It was the definition of mostly peaceful. And Ashley Babbitt got shot through a window. 135-pound woman who's maybe 5'5". She did it, and they made that guy a hero. You did the right thing. You shot that woman. Now, I will tell you, I would not have been trying to break through a window, but you don't deserve to die for that. How many BLM people and how many of these Sally boys and Antifa got shot? None.
And, zero.
Apparently, like roughly 50% of the federal charges were dropped once Biden took over the White House. You just let him go.
Just let him go.
Oh,
that's right.
Yes, and I'm sure you saw the Hamanazis in D.C. last week. I just let him go.
They let him go. They arrested him, and then they released him, and they didn't charge him. Just unbelievable.
They sent a 75-year-old woman in a wheelchair to a federal prison for 2 years for standing in front of an abortion clinic door. And the husband said, "Your Honor, please, she might die." And the judge, "This is sick." She goes, "Well, a part of a tenet of your religion is to live. So you might want to live," or something really gross.
Yeah, it was grotesque. What that judge told that woman was just ridiculous. It was an outrage, actually. It's like, oh, okay. Well, anyway, Kevin, thanks very much. Appreciate you coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. I hope you come back again, and be very happy to come on your show anytime. Thank you.
You know what? I'll hit you up in a couple of weeks. I'm booked for the next 2 or 3 weeks, but how about after that? We'll pick a topic and we'll just pull the commies apart or something.
Oh, that sounds fun, actually. All right. Now, for everybody who's sticking around for the rest of the program, you will be you'll be interested in hearing what Project 2025 is from the Heritage Foundation's point of view, and you'll be able to hear that when we come back. The 900-page mandate for leadership from the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, is the product of 350 practitioners, mostly conservative thinkers, who every election year have put together a roadmap for the next Republican president. If, in fact, that person gets hired, they have a blueprint from which they can work. Some presidents do it. Some presidents don't listen to it. But if they're smart, they do. And some of the changes that this huge roadmap from the Heritage Foundation have required, or at least suggested, are things that the chief executive can do out of the White House. Because, frankly, if you have to involve Congress in too many of the moves, you may never get anything what you want. But it's not a bad thing. Not such a bad thing. for an executive to be able to make executive moves and be able to hire, fire, and winnow down certain things in the government. And so the Heritage Foundation in this Project 2025 has ideas for 30 different agencies, probably more than that. There are sub-agencies below that. And, you know, you're not going to believe this, but the media are very, very upset about it because they are freaking out. Because this sounds a little too, I don't even know. It sounds a little too close, perhaps, to what they've been doing for years and years and years. Hey, wait a minute. The Democrats have been doing what we've been telling them for years. For example, I mean, you've got in Project 2025, you at least don't have someone suggesting, as the folks on the left do, that they instigate an entire regime of lawfare against a president, for example, like David Brock's Democracy Project did after Donald Trump had just been sworn in 2017. And you didn't see the right suggesting that the folks on any of these sue every lawyer known to man who has helped, had the temerity to have as their client the president of the United States. That didn't happen either. And also weaponizing the misleading and other kinds of speech that are that they don't like, and weaponizing it and criminalizing it. That's what the left has done. None of that is here in Project 2025. And that was all in the Democrats' playbook years ago, and they're still doing it. In fact, they stepped it up after Donald Trump decided to run again for president in 2022. He declared. So now the left has decided that 2025 is not just dangerous; it's terrifying. It's literally terrifying, and everyone should be worried.
This is not a normal election, and this is not your father's Republican Party. It's now Donald Trump's party, and if he's elected, the consequences will be catastrophic. Trump acolytes have an entire plan called Project 2025 that outlines priorities for the first 180 days of a new Trump administration. And it's not hyperbole to say that Project 2025 would dismantle democracy as we know it. Critics are calling it the fascist playbook, and it should be one of the reasons, if not the reason, that you vote this November. What's at stake here is not just a Republican agenda versus a Democratic agenda, as in years past, but democracy itself.
You know, asking the DOJ to follow the Constitution is ending democracy as we know it. So that's one of the things that they have suggested in Project 2025. Stephen Groves has spearheaded this effort. He's an editor on this project, so he's touched every single page of this 900-plus page report, this Project 2025. And Stephen Groves, thank you so much for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast, despite the fact that I can't talk and I have a big old cold and my notes are askew. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
We'll manage to muddle through, Victoria. Thanks for having me on. I've been talking so much for the past 2 weeks that my voice has been affected as well. So yeah, you and I will struggle through it together. We'll have our own struggle session.
We will have a struggle session. We will. Are there any of those struggle sessions, by the way, required in the Project 2025?
Well, I mean, let's face it. There's lots of disagreement among conservatives. This book, this 900-plus page book, it doesn't speak with one voice. You'll see lots of differences of opinion between various conservatives, because we recruited folks from all across the conservative spectrum to help write this book to give the next conservative president, some policy ideas, some recommendations. So we had our own version of struggle sessions, kind of hashing out some of our conservative ideas, but not like the kind they have on the left.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you haven't set up an entire ecosystem, have you, to go after the right? For example, the folks that follow the Democracy Project, David Brock's project with Crew. I mean, they stood up either zombie organizations or stood up entirely new organizations in order to further the idea that we need to go after with hammer and tong, or hammer and sickle, probably more accurately, to the political opposition. And they've in fact predicted that Donald Trump would be taken out in an impeachment, which of course they did. They fulfilled on some phony phone call situation. So it's not as if you're doing that in this. And there is disagreement. I noticed that Peter Navarro, who we've just had recently on the program, has it talks about the trade policies, and there's another conservative who has taken issue with what he suggests. So, I mean, these are all things that we're big people. We wear the big britches and big boy pants and that sort of thing, and we can handle it. But let me tell you something, or let me just ask you something, and about Project 2020. Well, before we get there, I want to ask you a little bit about your background, because I noticed that you had worked for Nikki Haley at the UN under the Trump administration. And then you came back and you were then tasked with being the liaison to the Mueller report people with the DOJ, Robert Mueller and Andrew Weissman, really, who's the face of that whole thing. Or I guess Mueller was, but Andrew Weissman was the pit bull, as everybody calls it. What was it like doing that?
You know, it was surreal. I was a deputy special counsel at the White House, first for Ty Cobb and then for Emmett Flood, and it was surreal because we knew deep down, of course, that the Trump campaign did not collude with Russia in order to win the election in 2016. So it was just a question of representing the White House and representing the president while Mueller went through all of the motions, and he tried to trump up, if you would, a bunch of obstruction of justice charges against the president, but decided that they didn't have enough evidence to go forward on any of them. So that was the original deep state. I mean, President Trump has been fighting the deep state before he was even president, when the FBI opened an investigation into his own political campaign and sicked people on him like Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and some of these deep state people who, under the Biden administration, they're paying off. They're paying off all their lawsuits that were brought against the DOJ. They're clearing $1 million judgments. So Trump's been fighting the deep state for a long time, and part of what Project 2025 is doing is coming up with ideas and recommendations that would assist the president in fighting the deep state should he be reelected in November, which we expect he will be.
Do you recommend that people who know that these charges, for example, are phony, the Russia collusion, as an example, a hypothetical, are phony, should they be criminally liable for bringing the pain with a prosecution they know is fake?
Well, that's one of the issues with, we hear a lot about immunity these days, whether President Trump has immunity for the acts that he took while he was in office. They have immunity too. And so that's why it's so dangerous, and why the FBI and the DOJ, if they're politicized as they were during the Russia investigation, how dangerous they can be, because they can act with almost total impunity to bring charges and to bring investigations and FISA warrants and all the power of the federal government against a political candidate that they don't agree with. So that's why, they've always held a special place in our government. And it's why President Trump, when he gets reelected in November, needs to take steps to start to rein some of that in. This is why the left is lying about Project 2025 and lying about Trump. They know that when he gets a second bite at this apple, it won't be the same thing. It won't be like when Mueller was in before. We see this coming. We see people like Jim Comey coming when he sends his agents to investigate Michael Flynn at the White House. We're not going to be tricked by that. To paraphrase from Beverly Hills Cop, we're not going to fall for the old banana in the tailpipe trick again. So,
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have fallen for it the first time. I mean, you obviously, I can't believe Flynn did he ever ask anybody if he should talk to these guys? I mean, does anyone ever talk to an attorney without?
These guys, and it was guys that knew what they were doing, that called Flynn up. And Flynn has said subsequently, he's like, yeah, I've been in the intelligence community my whole career. I was over at the Defense Intelligence Agency. To me, this were two of my colleagues in the intelligence community coming over to brief me about what happened with these calls with a Russian official. I had no reason to be concerned that they were out to get me, that this was a trap. When I asked about lawyers, they said, oh, if you bring in the White House counsel's office on this, it's just going to elevate it. Let's just keep this conversation between us old friends. And so they bamboozled him into it, and they tricked him. And then, they trumped up a bunch of things about him and said that he, didn't tell the truth about the transcripts, about his conversations with the Russian officials. And it changed his life for the worse, and I don't know that he's ever recovered from it. And it was because Jim Comey subsequently said in an interview, it was like, yeah, I knew that they were in disarray at the White House and they were getting their act together, and it was early days, so it was easy. I just sent over a couple of agents to do what we knew what we do, is get Michael Flynn into a perjury trap. It's what they did.
That's exactly what. And then he laughed.
Oh, he thought it was hilarious. Yeah. Now Comey's out, I'm sure, serving on corporate boards, pulling in 7 figures.
I'm sure he is.
All over the place. So, these things are rewarded on the left. They're not criticized. They are not condemned. This is how they operate. And the right will never lower ourselves to operating that way, but we're sure going to be ready for it in round 2. Yeah.
So what are you doing? What are you suggesting? For example, in the DOJ, you have some prescriptions for the DOJ. So Department of Justice, but you still call for 702. You still, I don't see you ending the FISA court or calling for a massive overhaul of the FISA court, which obviously did not have full attention on the Trump-Russia thing. They just rubber stamped everything the DOJ said. And it was something that they all, I don't know about the FISA judge, but they all knew spying on the presidential campaign is a very dicey proposition.
Well, there is, as I'm sure you know, a robust debate within conservative community about things like FISA and 702 and other tools that were made to fight terrorism, not to surveil a candidate for president. And what a lot of conservative policy experts and lawyers have concluded, and I think this is where the project fell, is that, it's the people who are in charge of those things that matter. And it's a dangerous thing. We don't want to get rid of tools that have successfully foiled terrorist plots, or tools that we need to surveil terrorist suspects when they're on U.S. soil. FISA reform has been a long debate in Congress about how to do it, whether the judges on the court need more oversight. I don't believe that the book came down heavy on either way in terms of, getting rid of everything, because when you took a long, hard look at what happened during the Mueller investigation, it wasn't that the tools were corrupt or the tools were a terrible idea. They were just abused by the wrong people. As long as we have judges and law enforcement, we're going to need to be able to, sign warrants and conduct surveillance domestically. We need to uncover the next 9/11 plot. We need to uncover when terrorists are plotting on our soil. So we'll need those tools. The important thing is to elect the right leaders and to put way more political oversight, which is something that we do call for in Project 2025, both in the DOJ and the FBI especially, that have been, permitted for far too long to operate with a great deal of power with minimal political supervision. And that's something that we hope will change. in the next conservative administration is if you put enough political oversight over something, then people like Strzok and Page and McCabe are less likely to abuse the powers that are given to them.
Where do they get off thinking they could do that? Strzok and Page, on the day we're recording, were each paid off $800,000 for Page, $1.2 million for Strzok for the DOJ. I guess they were subpoenaed. If I'm not mistaken, it was by Judicial Watch to get on a FOIA request, and they gave them their emails and their text messages rather, and the text messages from phones that they were required to have for government service, if I'm not mistaken. So where do they get off getting paid off for just being bad actors?
It's the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration that's paying them off. And they paid off McCabe as well. You remember at the end of the Trump administration, the Attorney General decided to cut off McCabe for all of the abuses that he conducted, all the things that he participated in. He sued as well and was paid off by the Biden administration. And Strzok and Page, who were, conducting an affair and texting each other on their government devices, are also getting paid off. Matter of fact, I mean, they're all doing very well. They're both spokesmen on MSNBC. Every time I look up at the screen, I see McCabe or Strzok talking about some issue of the day. So it's another thing that the left enjoys that people like you and I don't enjoy. When people got out of government service with the Trump administration, they had to scramble to find jobs because, within the establishment, they don't like Trump because they are the establishment. These guys get out of a Democrat as Democrats, even when they've had to resign or they're fired in shame, and they've got gigs on MSNBC and CNN and get payoffs from the Biden-Harris administration. So it's good to be a leftist. If you go against Trump, if you're a Trump enemy, you can get your payday.
Andrew Weissman, basically in charge of the Mueller investigation. One last question on that situation before we begin talking about the rest of Project 2025. What was it like to deal with him? Did you deal with him on an ongoing basis? Did you ever tell him that he was barking up the wrong tree, that he was being unethical? What?
Well, Mueller's team had a contact person, one of his senior, probably his number two on his team, who liaised with the White House, and it wasn't Weissman. So I didn't have any dealings with him, thankfully. The people that we did deal with or met with occasionally, they knew that Trump didn't collude with Russia.
They knew it was. They all knew it was a Hillary Clinton Oppo research thing.
Yeah, and so much of that came out in the years that followed with, the Alpha Bank nonsense and the so-called Steele dossier that the FBI and got all spun up on and pretended was real and made the basis of a FISA warrant against Carter Page.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, they all when they set out to do this, there was that White House meeting. There were a couple of them, but there was one particularly notorious White House meeting in which John Brennan and Clapper and Susan Rice and Biden and Obama were there, and Brennan, I think it was Brennan, told him that Hillary Clinton's got an op coming down. She's going to run this Russia collusion thing against Trump. So just let it, just know that it's coming. He told them in advance. There were lots of people there at this meeting. They all knew. You can't tell me somebody at the DOJ didn't go, yeah, it's an Oppo research thing from Hillary. No, they didn't, because they didn't want to. They're all bad actors. They're all bad actors. No forgiveness right now. Nobody's ever asked for it either.
No, they all probably contend to this day that they were doing the right thing and didn't break any rules or disobey any laws. And why should they believe that? They just got paid $1.2 million. Strzok just got paid $1.2 million for his role in this. So as far as and they have gigs on cable TV. So I don't know why they think they had done something wrong. They've been rewarded. They haven't been punished. They've been rewarded.
No, actually. Well, let's talk about MSNBC for just a second. Let us listen.
Inside Project 2025 is a detailed plan for dismantling the Voice of America's independence more successfully. Page 243 of Project 2025 reads, quote, as an executive branch agency, the U.S. AGM ostensibly should report to the president and coordinate activities with the National Security Council. The document also suggests placing it under the State Department. Now, that would transform the Voice of America from a reliable journalistic publication for global audiences to a personal propaganda machine for the president. It continues, ensuring that taxpayer-funded TV, radio, and messaging tells America's story is imperative. Currently, VOA's foreign language TV programming is unreliable in telling America's story, given its amorphous interpretation of its independence firewall, end quote.
Oh, okay. So you have a section on the media that the United States government oversees, and you talk about how it should be sent over to the State Department. And Ali Velshi, a guy who's from Canada, and Canadians don't have the First Amendment, so they have no protections there. Just FYI, he's having a hissy fit about it. Now, granted, if you think that Voice of America, Radio Marti, that reaches out to Cuba or whatever we're calling it now, and all these other programs that were designed to be pro-America, rah, hey guys, that was the point of it. They were propaganda machines. Now, you may not like that, but that's what they were. And they were always unabashedly that. And so you've got, no nuts over there talking to Ali Velshi, talking about the fact that, this is a journalistic enterprise. Well, and then you guys suggest they put it under the State Department. I can't imagine a better place to put it. I thought they were under the State Department, for God's sake. I
mean, God forbid that taxpayer dollars should go to actually pay for propaganda, which is what these are all things that were born during the Cold War so that we could broadcast news into the Soviet bloc, and now to do things in China and Cuba and other places where, we can't penetrate the media market. They're not supposed to be telling stories about how terrible America is, which is what some of these so-called media outlets do. And then God forbid that they shouldn't be answerable to the president, or at least the State Department. Some of these organizations, this is how some lefties feel about the DOJ and the FBI, that they're like some type of independent entity that just kind of lives separate and apart from the executive branch.
Right.
But
that comes through very clearly in your report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not how things are. And it's funny, you show those clips of Ali Velshi. I'm sitting there listening to the recommendation, and we're like, how is this controversial that we would want a taxpayer entity that is involved in disseminating information to report, to the president, or at least report through the State Department. So
you said it out loud was your fault. That was the problem.
Yeah. It's funny to see the reaction of some on the left when a very obvious and uncontroversial and not even that radical of a recommendation comes out, and how they react and do a whole segment on it. Ali Velshi, it's just embarrassing, really.
Well, if he did maybe he has, and I just don't seem to watch him very much, but if he maybe did an entire show on how Canada's government is running all the media, you might want to try that one. That's right in that's his wheelhouse, for crying out loud. But you also call for the government defunding of NPR and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, yes?
Yes, any taxpayer dollars that go to that's been a long conservative cause that Congress has tried and failed to do on several occasions. NPR has very much lost the narrative, very much has shown itself. Talk about, propaganda. If anyone's been listening to that program, I used to like to listen to NPR. In the morning, it was a pretty good source of straight up news reporting. But in the last, since the Trump years and beyond, there's no story on NPR that isn't one of these intersectional culture war nonsense, gender themed I think you just can't get away with it. It's become completely unwatchable. The way that Morning Joe used to be a watchable show back in the day, now it's become completely unwatchable and has been for years. So no taxpayer dollars need to be going to those NPR or other programs like that.
The NPR guy he was an editor for years, for 25 years or what have you. And he said, this is all true. I mean, you can't do a story unless it involves, it could be just the easiest story ever and the simplest story, a point A to point B story, but you always have to put in DEI into the story, even though it may not have anything to do with it, but you got to do it. Beg pardon?
Climate change.
Climate change. Absolutely. Climate change.
There's an interesting story about a woman who is a dog walker in Phoenix, Arizona, and climate change is affecting the number of dogs that she's been walking and how much water that she puts out in her bowl. And, they'll spend a half an hour on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you call for defunding. And of course, whenever this comes up, and it's come up many times, that these guys say, well, we don't get, for whatever reason, they decide to sort of fold into the controversial comments. Hey, we don't get that much. Hey, oh, sure, we really want the money, but we don't get that much. Come on, you guys. It's not that much money that you're spending in here. Well, fine. You guys sell commercials already. You sell sponsorships. You do everything a commercial radio station does or television station does. So let's just see if you can sell your product to the masses. And
yeah. So which is it? Is it, do you want the money? Do you need the money? Or is it not that big of a deal? But if you're going to have programming the way that they've consistently had programming over at least the last 10 years, you don't need taxpayer funding to fund that type of programming. So, I think NPR would be fine without taxpayer funding. They want the money, but maybe they'd have to do a bunch of more pledge drives or get more advertisers. But it's the point. It's the symbol that taxpayers are funding something that clearly has ideological and political biases in their reporting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. I think I've got this particular deal here. This is for the. This sounds real. Forgive me. I just cannot see this properly. But anyway, in terms of I'll take it down. So until I can figure out what this is, I had these big hopes of being able to show some of the Project 2025 on the screen and some of the things, for example, Department of Education. What did you recommend there?
Well, the number one recommendation is to dismantle the Department of Education so that it no longer exists, or if there are any programs worthy of being saved, that they be transferred to a different part of the executive branch. But for too long, the Department of Education has meddled in state and local educational decisions and, is doing more harm than good. It was stood up, back during the Carter administration, if I'm not mistaken, and educational results for our children up to and including high school have not gone up since the creation of the Department of Education. They've gone down. So of many federal agencies that probably should be dismantled or completely banished, the Department of Education is going to be number one for many conservatives, and the project calls for it to be shut down.
Well, and everything devolved back to the states. And, I'm old. I'm called the adult in the room for a reason. And I've been around. I'm not the kid in the room. And I remember I live in an era where the Department of Education didn't exist when I was a kid. It was, sure, the plans were there somewhere, but I think it happened under the Carter administration. And that's when he elevated it to a cabinet position. And ever since then, we have gotten nothing but terrible results. And sort of the idea of kids as widgets, and I think that it has just backfired on us. We've gone to the bottom in science and math. I mean, for crying out loud, it's not working. Whatever we're doing ain't working.
Yeah. Everyone knows that decisions about curricula and educational choices is a very local issue. I mean, there should be boards of education at the state level at the highest, but school boards within various school districts where parents can get involved. It's the parents and the children are all that matter. The teachers don't even matter. They've got union representation, but the parents and the teachers who give their taxpayer dollars to the state for public education. That's where these decisions need to be made, with their input and with them being present. Some bureaucracy up in Washington, D.C., they have no role in any of that. They shouldn't have any role in any of that. And Project 2025 sets out to recommend how best the Trump administration coming in could dismantle that department. It's a real windmill to tilt at for sure. There'll be massive controversy. You will need congressional involvement to do it successfully and effectively, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be something that we're striving for.
What would I know we've both talked about how it ain't working. What's the biggest explainer for justification for doing it in your mind?
The main reason is that when issues are best dealt with at a state and local level, the federal government should almost have no reason to dabble in it. Now, there are agencies that belong in the federal government. It's a job that only the federal government can do. We don't need all 50 states printing their own money. We don't need 50 states having their own trade policy with foreign countries or their own foreign policy or building aircraft carriers. Some things do belong in the federal government where there is a role, but the education of kindergartners and seventh graders, that's not something that a bunch of bureaucrats in Washington should be deciding on a regular basis. It's just none of their business, really. When they get involved, not only do things not improve, they get worse. And they, especially with the incoming Democrats trying to inject all types of DEI material, all the things regarding, these books that are in children's libraries that are inappropriate. The people that are the Federal Department of Education, they're in favor of all that stuff. They're not doing anything to prevent that. In fact, they bring lawsuits, against school districts and schools that are trying to get that garbage out of kids' libraries.
Is that one of the big ones that the left looks at and says that, oh no, they've looked in the mirror and their hair is on fire over it? I mean, is this the big thing for them?
It's one of the ones that the left actually is telling the truth about when they talk about the project. Mostly the left lies about Project 2025 and make up recommendations that we never make. And then they try to lie and say these are actually Trump's recommendations. This is his project, which is another lie.
Yeah, these are his Agenda 47 is his.
He's got his agenda. The Republican Party has its platform. We're an independent project of more than 100 conservative organizations making policy recommendations to the next president that we hope he'll take a look at. But they actually, among the lies that the left makes about the project, they include in there nuggets of truth, like they want to get rid of the Department of Education because they know that'll fire up their people. So that's one of the things they actually tell the truth about, is we want to get rid of it, along with the other lies they tell.
Now, another thing that you've done, and this is a more serious one, and it goes to the heart of the deep state, if you will, and that is to get rid of a lot of people, and they're freaking out about it because you want to combine certain offices together. Why does the FBI have an entire phalanx of attorneys when the last time we checked, the FBI is contained in the DOJ, and they have a whole bunch of lawyers over there. So they're afraid there are a lot of people going to be out of jobs.
Well, they know those are all gainfully employed Democrat votes. I mean, the federal bureaucracy is regularly polled about who they're going to support in the next election or what party affiliation they have. It's always 90 plus, 95 plus Democrat. So these are great paying jobs deep in the deep state. And when a conservative does get into the White House, as President Trump did, these people are there to slow roll and block and put up obstacles to implementing the president's agenda. So the left likes these people right where they are. And that's why the left doesn't have a problem with the deep state. When there's President Biden is in office or Obama is in office, or if Harris is somehow, God forbid, elected, no one's slow rolling their policies. They're completely in favor of them. They're working overtime to get those policies, through and implemented, and getting those regulations written and implemented. It's only when there's a conservative in the Oval Office where all of a sudden it becomes difficult to implement policy. Isn't it funny how that works?
Isn't it funny how that works? And of course, we've got lots of people on the payroll, and we've got inflation like none other. And there's an ability. How would you change the ability to fire these people? Do you have to change the unions that they're a part of? How does that happen? Or you just sort of, we don't have that department anymore, so you don't have a job. Is that what's going on?
There's a couple of mechanisms. And the goal isn't to get rid of people per se. The goal is to get people in the bureaucracy who are going to be more accountable to the White House and to the president. And what the main recommendation here is something that President Trump tried at the end of his administration called Schedule F. Have you heard of Schedule F, Victoria?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the left says, oh, that's just so Trump can come in and fire 10,000 people. Well, it's ridiculous. We don't have 10,000 people that could fill those spots. But what it would do is make those 10,000 people who are senior members of the bureaucracy, people who can implement policy, even make policy or block policy, more likely when it's Trump, is to make those people fireable, or you can move them, you can transfer them, you can demote them, you can fail to promote them, if they make it clear that they're not willing to execute the president's agenda, which is what they're hired to do. That's what they're paid to do. Right now, without Schedule F, they have the ability to put up obstacles, slow roll, otherwise slow down presidential agendas. And Schedule F is a way to bring that layer of the bureaucracy more into the orbit of political accountability.
You still need to have oversight so that people know what they're doing, right? I mean, so that you can invoke Schedule F, or at least begin the discussion of getting rid of people and, that kind of thing. I don't see that there's much of a will there. Do you?
Well, it's going to take some political will for sure. These recommendations that we're making are not easy. They will not be popular. The left will go absolutely nuts. The media, the non-Fox, non-conservative, non-Victoria, adult in the room media is going to go to the mattresses for this, because they know that the senior levels of the federal bureaucracy are their Praetorian guard against the very types of policies that President Trump will want to implement in a second term. So it will be war. We hope and believe that President Trump in a second term will have the will. He had the will to do it at the end of his first term. We're hoping that it's among the first things that he does after he's inaugurated in January. So Schedule F, watch out for it. And that's why the left is so much against Trump and so much against Project 2025, because we're pushing and for Schedule F to become a reality again.
They just like to run the organization just as if it's their own. They prefer to have mobs of people versus individuals thinking for themselves. And that's the problem. And in general, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. I mean, people just know that. It's axiomatic. And so when you want to reduce the size of government, people feel threatened.
Yeah, it's a zero-sum game. The more government there is out there, the government's going to govern, which means they're going to be in your lives. And the Project 2025 book, Mandate for Leadership, if anything, is an absolute, crying out for the reduction of federal government in our lives, all government in our lives. The more authority and tax dollars that are returned to American citizens, the better off they are. They know how to spend their money. They know how to educate their children. They know how to start businesses without being overregulated. Return that authority to the people. And you'll see that in chapter after chapter after chapter in Mandate for Leadership. The left doesn't like that. The left likes the power. They love to have government over people, and they love to have control over people. This is about control at the end of the day.
You talk about the intelligence community, the IC. What were some of the recommendations you made? And have they ever gotten anything right in the past 30 years? Are you asking them to get their, heads out of their dark and remote locations?
It's tough for like many other parts of the law enforcement, military, and intelligence community, the men and women who are on the razor's edge, that are out there in Pakistan, in some of these hardship posts, trying to gather intel, trying to prevent more terrorist attacks, trying to gather information that would help the U.S. There's very, very good, dedicated, very pro-America parts of these communities. But like everywhere else, the bigger the bureaucracy, the more chance there is for rot. You mentioned Brennan at the beginning of the segment, and just look at the damage that single man has caused to the reputation of the intelligence community. And I'm sure he's a multimillionaire. I'm sure he sits on corporate boards and he's on cable television all the time too, as if nothing.
He still has his security clearance. Trump took it away, but then he got it back, right?
Yeah.
So
this is how the deep state works, and the way that the Project 2025 looks at it is like the FBI and like the DOJ, more oversight, more political appointees, that it can keep an eye on things, to keep things from spinning out of control, to keep an eye on the bureaucracy, and to make sure that they are more accountable to the White House and not some entity living over in Langley, Virginia, or wherever they're going to move the FBI headquarters to, somewhere in Maryland, I think. They are accountable to a single person, the President of the United States. The left has this understanding that these are semi-autonomous parts of the executive branch out there. It's untrue. The Constitution vests all executive power in one person, the president. The DOJ is not independent. The FBI is not independent. The CIA is not independent. They don't own an ounce of authority that does not derive from the power of the president. The left has long ago forgot that. We need on the right to remind ourselves of that and to remind the next president of that. And the next president can act accordingly and use that authority from the Oval Office to get these folks back in line, putting their mission where it belongs, which is gathering intelligence on our enemies, preventing attacks, and protecting the United States and its citizens.
Big Intel, the book written by J. Michael Waller, is a real clinic on how to devolve the FBI back into other organizations. It was not put in the Constitution. It's a memo by a former FBI chief, I think it was, who just declared it to be thus and so, and therefore that's their founding document, which is reliant upon no heft from the legislative branch, the executive branch. They've just been bumping along forever. And he goes, well, wait a minute. So DHS can take some things off. Secret Service can take some things off. The U.S. Marshal Service can take some things off. His contention is we actually don't need an FBI.
Well, I know I'm
but you guys didn't come to the same
arguments.
conclusion. I was kind of surprised.
Well,
anyway,
the project itself, understand, is not the product of a single author, right?
Right.
So the
350 authors, right?
350 contributors that all contributed to the various named authors. And the author of the DOJ chapter has experience both, I believe, at DOJ and DHS. And we're conservative and we're ready to do battle, but we also have to have our ideas tempered by realism. We have to make recommendations to the next president that could be executed first within the transition period, and then over a four-year term, which we know, even if President Trump is reelected, which we expect him to be, he's got 4 years to get down to business. So all the chapters and the recommendations, are tempered by the idea that we want to be realistic. We can be a burn it to the ground conservative if we want to. And for example, on like the Department of Education, we're like, yeah, burn it to the ground. But there are some institutions that could benefit from reform rather than just, wiping it from, giving it the Carthage treatment, So we're hoping, we got our fingers crossed. We think that there's a mission that the DOJ and the FBI could execute for the benefit of the American people in fighting crime and fighting terrorism. And we hope that the right political leadership gets in and can turn that around at those institutions.
What have you recommended for the Federal Reserve? I did not read that part of it, but I know a lot of my listeners and watchers, viewers are besotted with the idea of getting rid of the federal, or at least auditing it. What do you recommend?
Much more scrutiny of the Federal Reserve. We had people within the project who had some strong views on what to do with the Fed. Our author on that, Paul Winfrey, he set forth what I thought was a pretty conservative, with a small c, and realistic set of recommendations for bringing the Fed back into what it's meant to be doing, what its mission should be, while at the same time, making recommendations that alternatives to the Fed, should be reviewed. That if reforms don't work, then the Fed has become something that is incapable of reform, and substitute organizations could either do the job or get rid of that as part of the federal government. So I think Paul struck the right balance there.
What's the extent to which the federal government has control over the Fed?
Well, I mean, short of appointing the Fed chairman and the members of the board, I don't think that they do. I think Congress has a much better opportunity in holding hearings about the Fed and its activities, that the oversight that Congress can do much more effective than what the executive branch can do. And that's part of the problem, is it? Because they don't feel that they're accountable to the executive branch, and they have a quasi independence from it. As conservatives, many of us believe in something called the unitary executive, where if you're either in the executive branch or you're not. There's three branches of government. The framers of the Constitution didn't say anything about a fourth. You've got Congress, you've got the executive, and you have the judicial branch. So the Fed doesn't fall squarely within those three, nor do things like the CFTC, Elizabeth Warren's baby, and some of these semi-autonomous entities, not DOJ and FBI. Those are squarely within the executive branch. And so when we create these things, when Congress creates these things, when presidents sign into law legislation that creates these things, we are slowly moving the democracy out of our tripartite design. So much of the book wants us to draw back and come back to where the Constitution is. That is our starting point. If you do a search for the word Constitution in the book, you'll find it, in every chapter. It's all around the place, and that's something that I'd like your listeners to listen to. You hear all of these lies about, the Mandate for Leadership book. It's all online in black and white. You can go there. You find a chapter you like. You hit Control F. You search for a term. You want to search for something about education or about national security or abortion. It's easy enough to find. So it's very easy to fact check the left and its lies, which they've been telling legion amounts of lately. And we've gotten several fact checks back in our favor. No fact checks against us. We've gotten Daniel Dale from CNN has fact checked the left and Kamala on their lies in our favor. PolitiFact has fact checked Kamala and her lies and Biden's lies about the project, come back in our favor. So the book is right there online, available for anyone who wants to read it. Yeah, it's free.
Order it if you want. But how much is? Oh, it doesn't matter. If you want,
it's actually sold out. It's actually sold out right now.
I believe it.
But you can download it for free if you like.
That's what I did. So before we let you go, I wanted to ask you that in light of the Loper-Bright decision that basically tossed out the Chevron deference and talked about, the administrative state and how they shouldn't be in charge of things that the Congress should be in charge of. To what extent does that inform your decision-making or your suggestions, recommendations in this report, Project 2025?
Yeah, what a huge win. I mean, Chevron doctrine, they've been fighting for a long time. And the telling thing to come out of it was conservatives rejoiced in the decision. Thank God that these things will properly be decided by Congress, by people who are going to be accountable to their electorate. It was the left who decried the decision, who talked about how horrible it was going to be in the country. Why? Because power was taken away from the bureaucracy. Power was taken away from the regulators. And that's your tell. When power is taken away from the executive branch to create these regulations that hurt regular Americans trying to start a business or trying to farm their land, and given back to Congress where it belongs, where laws are made, conservatives cheer, liberals cry. That's all you need to know about that.
Well, yeah. My friend of mine is an attorney who was just livid at this decision, and the reason he said, "Well, you're going to have a judge decide these things," to which I would say, "Oh, so you would prefer an administrative judge inside of an agency to make those decisions, as opposed to a judge that has, the ability to call in discovery and to weigh evidence and that sort of thing?" I mean, the expert class is pissed.
Well, I never understand it. It's a disingenuous argument, because what the decision does is say, hey, instead of getting down into all these issues of what you're going to regulate and whether the tsetse fly is going to be regulated or whether this little puddle of water falls under the Clean Water Act, let Congress decide that. They can get into the details. They can pass the legislation, and there'll be hearings. There'll be more transparency. Don't wait to hand it off to these bureaucrats or so-called experts in the executive branch who will essentially be making the law instead of executing the law.
And they've been writing the bills. They've been writing the law all these years. I mean, when was the last time the Congress actually wrote a bill? Do you even know? I mean, do they even write bills anymore?
Yeah, there's been no regular order in recent memory. I'm not sure what they do. They just put it all into a big omnibus, or stuff it all into a National Defense Authorization Act, or wait till the government's about to quote unquote shut down, and that's how they get regular business done these days. And it's hopefully our project is really, of course, geared towards the executive branch, but much in our project and what we recommend require Congress to take action. So hopefully, along with a conservative in the White House in November, a conservative Senate and a conservative House could follow, and perhaps we can start to roll back some of the damage that Biden and Harris have done us to the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. One last thing, I'm looking. Oh, you have Health and Human Services here. Do you call for a ban on abortion nationwide? Is that what the left is screeching about?
Yeah, it's one of their lies. Some abortion issues are addressed in the HHS chapter, particularly an abortion pill that is widely used but didn't really have the proper Food and Drug Administration studies done for it. So they did call for the author of that chapter and his team did call for a rethinking of that particular abortion pill, but that's not good enough for the left. It's not splashy, so they lie and say that the project calls for a nationwide abortion ban, which we never do. That's just an outright lie. I mean, we have conservatives in the project. There's probably conservatives in the project who would be in favor of a nationwide abortion ban or some policy different than the president's, which is, hey, we won Roe v. Wade, let's leave it to the states. But those ideas didn't make it into the book. The book is right there in black and white, and people can go search through that HHS chapter looking for something that we didn't recommend, but we just certainly did not recommend that.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe better to stay out of that. I know a lot of conservatives and pro-life people are really upset about it. But what they should be happy about is that you've asked for and recommended that the DOJ follow the law and the Constitution. So, and the FACE Act is brought up multiple times in that. Can you talk, I know we're supposed to wind up, but I just want to find out from you what your thinking is on that and what the recommendations are.
I'm sorry, you'll have to remind me what the FACE Act is.
The FACE Act the FACE Act is the acronym for the law that requires people who are at abortion clinics to stay out of the way of people or even getting too close to abortion clinics. And we had recently, and fairly recently, a case in which a woman was, grandma was in there praying. She comes across a woman who's literally in labor, and according to the Associated Press, in labor, going in to get an abortion. I don't know what transpired. I don't think there was certainly no violence or anything. But if you're even remotely close to people going in, you could be jacked up on federal charges. And the other thing is that, you've got all these, and it was talked about in the report. It was the people who are blowing up the pro-life clinics, they're not getting jacked up and sent to federal prison. Oh no. In fact, I would suggest that a lot of those arson bombings are not even solved at this point. But
or you wonder how deeply they are even investigated sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we still don't know who allegedly put the bombs out near the DNC during January 6th. We've got those people on videotape.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll leave it there. I just would like to say one more thing, and that is that, poor Kamala, she avoided an attempted assassination for, she was able to get out of the way of an inert pipe bomb, and the Secret Service didn't seem to be too upset about it and let people all over the place walk by it. So guess, she doesn't go out bragging about avoiding and averting a deathly experience, a near-death experience. She, as a matter of fact, is quite quiet about that.
Yeah, because didn't she lie? Didn't she lie at the beginning and say that she was?
She was there.
She was at some location, and then she wasn't at the location. I can't keep up with her
she
lies.
Said it took a year. It took a year to find out where she was. She was not at the Capitol, and people's sentencing was enhanced by the fact that she, an elected vice president, was in the building. And I don't know if those people who were given those enhancements were made right, but she was a liar. And they wanted her to lie.
Well, one of the things that an incoming administration can do, and can do early, like from the election day forward, even before the inauguration, we put in people called landing teams as part of the transition. And they can get in early and often and dig out all of these things that we've been wondering about for the past 4 years, and all the things that have gone into the Jan 6 prosecutions, and have that material ready for the president when January 20 and the inauguration comes. So, the stakes couldn't be higher in November, and so Project 2025 is there to help support and give recommendations to President Trump when he wins in November.
Stephen Groves, Heritage Foundation, thank you very much. I imagine you'll have a job in a future Trump administration. Might that be?
Well, I'm sure there's people here that are interested in that. When he won in 2016, several people from Heritage, including myself, went and served in his administration for several years, and then some of us came back. But part of the project is to invite people from all across the country to put their names into our personnel database, to be reviewed and vetted and interviewed. And I think we've got like 15,000 people who have signed up into our personnel database. The president has some critical 4,000 political appointments to make when he is elected. And so part of our project is to gather folks who are interested in serving in the next administration, to vet them, to interview them, to go over their social media and all of the things and their qualifications, to see about recommending them to the president, because the president's involved in finding good cabinet picks. The project's going to help recommend people to fill everything from special assistants all the way through undersecretaries. So we'll be making those recommendations when President Trump wins in November, and hopefully he'll smile on some of them, because we've got a lot of great people that are looking to serve, a lot of great conservatives who are looking to serve and help the president with his policy agenda.
Good. Well, thank you so much. Good luck.
Thanks, Victoria.
And thank you for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. And once again, please make sure you subscribe, share, comment. It all helps the algorithm. Sure appreciate that. And join us again for the Adult in the Room podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. To keep the programs you like to listen to, please rate this podcast with a fantastic 5 stars on your Apple Podcast app every time you listen. And give me a great review. Plus, of course, subscribe to the podcast. It makes a difference with the big tech algorithm and the big tech oligarchs, and it makes us easier to find. Please get in touch with me on all the big tech stuff. Yeah, we're still there. Using the names Victoria Taft or the Adult in the Room podcast on MeWe, Parler, Minds, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks to 1ACast for imaging, editing, and production. The fantastic song is Gospel by the March 4th Band of Portland, Oregon. Music for Antifa versus Mike Strickland is Ride or Die by Raps by RC. The Adult in the Room podcast is also a production of Flamingo Road Studios. Remember, head up, heart out, and strive to be the adult in the room. Till next time, mischief managed.